I think, therefore I am. The phrase was coined by French philosopher René Descartes in the 17th century. It's an assertion that thought and the idea of self are synonymous. Fast forward to the 21st century, they're calling it the next frontier in innovation, neurotechnology. The potential to peek inside your skull, decode your thoughts, and maybe even tweak them while they're at it. Scientists and tech moguls rave about brain-computer interfaces, neural implants, and mind-reading gizmos. Tools they say will cure diseases, boost productivity, and potentially one day connect us all in some blissful digital hive mind. But are we really ready to hand over the keys to our heads to a bunch of lab coats and Silicon Valley billionaires? Or worse still, the government? What happens when your employer has access to your brain activity? When the algorithms start whispering to our neurons or hijacking them completely? This isn't science fiction anymore. It's here, about to creep out of labs and research and development centers worldwide. But the prospect raises more questions than it answers. Welcome to the eerily dystopian world of neurotech, where the line between breakthrough and breakdown feels razor thin.
We stand on the brink of a technological revolution, one that promises to unlock the mysteries of the human mind. From brain-to-computer interfaces that allow us to control machines with a thought, to artificial intelligence that decodes our emotions in real time. But as these innovations race forward, a critical question emerges. Will we keep control of our own minds in an age where our neural data can be harvested, analyzed, and even changed? At the same time, a shadowy new weapons category is emerging. Neuroweapons, capable of manipulating our minds and emotions. These covert technologies raise chilling questions about control, ethics, and the future of conflict. In this film, we'll take a look at these emerging trends, and I'll share my own experience with what I can only describe as a neuroweapon.
Meet your brain's new best friend, or so they say. Neurotechnology, once the stuff of sci-fi, is about to crash land in your living room. There are two main categories of neurotechnology. The first is non-invasive, wearable brain-to-computer interfaces and augmentation devices. The second is implants, which, as we will find out, can also include nanotechnology. However, for this second category, research has shown that society is more than a little apprehensive. A Pew Research study found that just 20% of people would consider having an implant. That's just fine for companies like Elon Musk's Neuralink. They're focused on solving the problems of the mind, giving sight to the blind and allowing the paralyzed to control computers with thought. But some pitch neurotechnology as the inevitable future of humanity, with suggestions that it could soon become seamlessly embedded into devices we already use, like headphones. There must be a significance to all of this. Some are predicting the neurotechnology market will become a $32 billion industry by 2030, and big tech's already salivating. Silicon Valley giants and dozens of startups you've not yet heard of are racing to slap electrodes either onto or into your head, promising to enable brain-to-computer telepathy, decode your thought processes, and even replay your dreams. But before you buy that focus-assisting headband, let's take a hard look at what's at stake. Firstly, it's important to be clear about the potential benefits to society. Clinical trials of Neuralink have already given their first subjects a new lease of life. Now imagine the potential benefits for mental health, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, even depression.
Introducing electrical current into the brain or certain magnetic pulses is being shown to very robustly treat conditions like depression, certain sleep disorders. The devices that we're talking about now are more data collection. And then you have sort of the opposite side of that coin being neural stimulation and what we're calling mental augmentation. So things like magnetic stimulation to the brain, electrical stimulation to the brain, in certain cases, what we call neurofeedback, or influencing brain activity by the merits of certain parts of it being read in a certain way.
On the consumer side, the current range of devices are promising to improve your concentration and well-being. But these gadgets aren't just toys. They're bridges between your neurons and big tech's data centers. That's where it gets murky.
When we're talking about neurotech, it's important to remember what exactly it is that we are measuring, and that is our brain waves and our brain activity. And that can reveal things that are happening subconsciously, and it can also reveal higher level thought processes. It uses the raw data and applies algorithms to it in order to decode what's going on. And it can use that kind of information to determine incredibly sensitive information about us, like our political opinions, our sexual orientation, our implicit biases. And so when we're thinking about the rise of neurotech and the possibility for this kind of data to be mined for insights about ourselves, we need to be thinking about this as the final frontier of our privacy. It's an incredibly frightening thought.
The unique specificities and qualities of neural data mean that consumers are entering a landscape where they absolutely have a blindfold on. Even neural data from wearable consumer devices can be analyzed. Companies can access information about you, such as neurological disorders, mental health diagnoses, and increasingly elements of your thoughts.
Our thoughts, our mental activity, the way we think, what we think about, the way our brain works, that's what's being commodified.
Neurotech starts with the best intentions, but it quickly risks becoming a form of surveillance that we've never seen before.
I think this risk of misuse increases exponentially as soon as we move away from the domain of biomedical research and clinical intervention, and we start using these technologies in the consumer space. Our brains are the last refuge of privacy, and if we lose control over this, then we risk exposing the most intimate layers of our mental life to external scrutiny, manipulation, or even exploitation.
These devices are not marketed to treat medical conditions. They're marketed as wellness devices. And so the rules and regulations, in my understanding, apply differently. However, at the same time, they are collecting medical grade data. There are still gaps and things where patient and consumer data may be at risk of not being protected.
Will advertisers eventually start interpreting your brainwaves to sell you more junk? Will your boss slap you with a warning if you're not fully focused all day? Experts like Nita Farahani warn we're a hop away from what she calls brain transparency becoming the norm.
You glance at the program running in the background on your computer screen and notice a now familiar sight that appears whenever you're overloaded with pleasure. Your theta brainwave activity decreasing in the temporal regions of your brain. Your mind starts to wander to the new colleague on your team, whom you know you shouldn't be daydreaming about, given the policy against intra-office romance. But you can't help fantasizing just a little. But then you start to worry that your boss will notice your amorous feelings when she checks your brain activity and shift your attention back to the present.
What do you think? Is it a future you're ready for? You may be surprised to learn that it's a future that has already arrived. Everything in that video that you just saw is based on technology that is already here today. Artificial intelligence has enabled advances in decoding brain activity in ways that we never before thought possible. What we've seen consistently is companies from Amazon to Tesco to Walmart and others have introduced what is considered to be bossware or surveillance technology that employees really don't like it, even if it makes their lives better. Okay, well, if you don't like your job, just quit. But what if there's nowhere to go? What if everywhere has ubiquitous monitoring? So what do we do with this? What do we do with technology that enables us to monitor brainwave activity for attention? Do we embrace it? Do we resist it?
I wouldn't advocate for employers being able to track brain data. It would just be a wholesale intrusion into individuals' mental space. We don't know what the limits of that would be, and it's a coercive relationship.
Around the world, there are employers that have been experimenting with these brain monitoring technologies. But the question is, what happens when this technology moves into an office or a low-risk job? And a lot of the consumer devices that are on the market today are pitched as productivity tools. If your job or your promotion depends on you saying yes to your employer, can you really say no to that?
Allowing employers to track this data risks creating a surveillance culture where cognitive liberty, as we call it, the freedom of thought in the literal sense, is undermined. And it's not just a question of data protection. I think we should emphasize this. It's about protecting the very fabric of individual freedom and dignity.
These devices will hoover up our brain data if we let them. Countries around the world are tightening regulations to protect their citizens. Good luck keeping up with the patent frenzy. Apple, Google, Meta, Snapchat, they're all in the game. Back in 2023, Apple filed a patent to fit their popular AirPods with hardware able to read the, quote, electrical activity of the brain of a user using an EEG device. Google futurist Ray Kurzweil predicts that by the 2030s and 2040s, nanobots the size of blood cells will swim through our bodies, linking our neocortex to the cloud.
These nanobots, these blood cell-sized devices, will be going in our bodies, keeping us healthy from inside. We'll have some go inside our brains through the capillaries, non-invasively. They'll be interacting with our biological neurons. They'll extend our memory, our decision-making faculties. They'll put our brains on the internet, and they'll also enable us to enter a virtual reality environment from within the nervous system. So if I want to go in a virtual reality environment, the nanobots will shut down the signals coming from my real eyes and my real skin and create the signals that would be appropriate for the virtual environment.
Tech's favorite doomsayer, Yuval Noah Harari, has a wild claim. We're not just humans anymore. We're hackable animals. In various interviews and presentations, he argues that science has already cracked us open. Algorithms, AI, and neurotech won't just predict our choices, they can rewrite them.
We'll soon have the power to re-engineer our bodies and brains, whether it is with genetic engineering or by directly connecting brains to computers. What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. To hack a human being is to get to know that person better than they know themselves. And based on that, to increasingly manipulate you.
Harari's point: with enough data, your clicks, your pulse, your neurons, AI will know you better than you know yourself. But before neurotech creeps from labs into your Amazon cart, it's worth asking, who will be holding the reins to your data? Companies in the brain augmentation space envision a future where we boost memory, learn instantly, and maybe merge our minds with artificial intelligence. A chip in your brain could make you an instant genius. The promise is breathtaking. A world where disabilities vanish, where education is a download, where creativity knows no bounds. But every leap forward casts a shadow. What happens when your thoughts aren't just yours? When corporations or governments can peek inside, or worse, tweak what's there? In the wrong hands, it's a tool for control. And if the brain can be upgraded, who decides what better means? In a 2018 Draper University presentation entitled Connecting Minds to the Internet, Founderspace CEO Steve Hoffman gave the world a preview of where the technology is headed.
What's coming next will literally blow your mind. There are new technologies, and a lot of them are being developed by startups and the military that are going to allow us to much more accurately measure and actually communicate with your brain. Scientists have also done several experiments on what they call dream reading. You can start to interpret somebody's dreams through the technology. Now, MIT has a technology, and there are a couple startups that are also working on this, that are building mind-reading software along the same lines as I told you there. So the mind-reading software is really interesting because it's much simpler. When all of us speak to ourselves in our head. So if you can match the patterns in somebody's brain to the patterns in the database, you can literally start to read their mind. It wouldn't take long for you to train a machine to read your mind. Now, that's just the beginning. They may be able to have algorithms sophisticated enough and they get enough samples, enough data, the AI could actually learn over time what the general rules are for different words, and then you could apply it to anybody.
It's currently a largely unregulated area. Unregulated at the point of design, unregulated at the point of going into the market, often with very powerful capacity to decode, to change that brain activity.
They have no clinical trials. There's no oversight. There's no requirement to prove their efficacy. And there's no formal mechanism to ensure that they're actually respecting user rights in the same way as you would a patient.
Neuro rights is a growing movement to protect the mind in this brave new world. In 2021, Chile became the first nation to enshrine brain rights into its constitution, guarding against misuse of cognitive data. As neurotechnology begins to creep into our lives, one group is stepping into the fray, the Neuro Rights Foundation. Founded in 2017 by neuroscientist Raphael Just and a coalition of academics and lawyers, this New York-based outfit isn't here to cheerlead the brain tech boom. As Just warned in an interview with Vox, it's not just mental privacy at stake. There's also the risk of someone using neurotechnology to directly manipulate our minds. In other words, mind control.
In neurotechnology are devices and methods that can do two things. They can either be used to measure the activity of the brain or to change the activity of the brain. We're worried because, again, the brain is not just another organ of the body, and this technology can offer the opportunity to decode and manipulate mental activity. Is this science fiction? It's not science fiction. In laboratories like myself, we've been doing this routinely with laboratory animals like mice, where we can implant artificial images in the heads of mice and control their behavior. They essentially behave as if they're seeing these images that they're not really seeing, that we're actually putting into their brains with neurotechnology. What we can do in a mouse today, you can do in the future in a human.
The Neuro Rights Foundation are pushing for a new kind of human rights, neuro rights, to protect your thoughts, your identity, your very self from the prying eyes of algorithms and electrodes. They argue for 5 core principles: mental privacy, personal identity, free will, fair access to technology, and protection from bias.
The Neuro Rights Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit that essentially works to ensure that neurotechnologies are leveraged for social good and safeguarded from misuse. We do cutting-edge research on the intersection of brain science, technology, and society. And importantly, we transform that research into policy action. So the Neuro Rights Foundation is an interdisciplinary team of neuroscientists, physicians, human rights lawyers, policy experts, human rights advocates. And we are all coming together because we both believe in the transformative potential of neurotechnologies and also understand that we are on the precipice of a new human experience. We believe that these technologies are going to rapidly become embedded in society, and we're excited about that, but we also want to get it right. What's concerning is that what can be revealed from the data sets today is not the same as what can be revealed from the data sets in the future, especially because once these devices truly proliferate and become embedded in society, companies will amass larger and larger data sets, which will allow them to, make it more easy to train algorithms and models based on your specific neural data. There's an amount of data that is needed in order to run the device or offer the service. But the companies scrape far more than that. And, unlike if I were consenting to you looking through my bag while in line for security at the airport, I know exactly what is in that bag. I know what you will and you will not find in that bag. I actually don't know what you will and will not find in a scan of my brain. I have no idea. I don't know how much you've taken, how much information, I don't know what your algorithms are. And so the question of informed consent is really challenging in this area because you can actually poke holes in both of those words, in informed and in consent. I mean, can you truly be meaningfully informed fully? And can you really meaningfully consent in this space if you don't understand what the full risks are or what the data are? This is a now problem, and it's about to explode.
The Neurorights Foundation aren't alone in their concern. In April 2024, the state of Colorado signed into law an expansion of the definition of sensitive data to include neural data generated by the brain. California, home to Silicon Valley, made a bold move on September 28, 2024. Governor Gavin Newsom signed SB 1223, dubbed the Neural Privacy Act. Both bills were backed by the Neurorights Foundation in a flex against what they consider to be legal loopholes allowing consumer devices to capture personally identifiable brain data. But here's the snag. These bills only protect against data that is considered personally identifiable. As this New York Times article points out, most of these device makers will be less interested in defining a person's identity and more interested in inferring what a person might be thinking or feeling. So is this a shield or just a speed bump? And what about in Europe? International human rights lawyer and author Susie Allegra believes we don't need neurorights. In an op-ed in the Financial Times, she argues that in countries such as the UK or member states of the EU, where applicable domestic and international laws do guarantee the absolute right to freedom of thought, it is a potentially dangerous distraction from the protection we already have.
One thing that might be reassuring is that we do already have laws that we can develop to protect our neuro rights. Under Article 9 of the European Convention of Human Rights, there is a right to our freedom of thought, conscience, and religion.
The right to freedom of thought is particularly relevant here because it's an absolute right. So that means under no circumstances, with no justification, with no exceptions, can the right be violated. It may not come as a surprise, but some countries do not acknowledge the right to freedom of thought in law or, of course, in practice. Vietnam being one. China, you would think, is one as well. But the thing about China is that Chiang, who was the Chinese representative to the United Nations as it was drafting the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, was incredibly influential, and he brought with him conscience and the concepts of conscience, the philosophy around conscience. But now, in practice, there is no rights to freedom of thought in China.
In 2013, under the Obama administration, the US government unveiled the BRAIN Initiative. It was a bold bid to decode the human mind with a slick $100 million kickoff budget. Teaming the National Institutes of Health and DARPA, the initiative set out to map the brain's wiring, ostensibly to fight diseases. But DARPA's involvement raises questions. Is this about curing epilepsy or weaponizing the mind for a military edge? In 2023, a chilling report surfaced, a revelation about China's next frontier in warfare. Not missiles or robots, but the human mind itself. Dubbed brain warfare, this emerging arsenal allegedly includes sleep weapons, tools designed to disrupt, manipulate, or control the enemy without firing a shot. The Washington Times reported that China is developing these neurostrike weapons that can directly attack or control brains using microwave and other directed energy weapons. The report goes on to say that China's neurostrike weapons arsenal includes using massively distributed human-to-computer interfaces to control entire populations. On May the 8th, 2024, a little-noticed hearing unfolded in Washington, D.C., not about traditional threats, but something quieter, stranger, and far more insidious. The House Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement and Intelligence convened under the title Silent Weapons. Their focus: anomalous health incidents, including Havana syndrome and the possibility that invisible tools are targeting Americans, from diplomats abroad to citizens at home. The hearing didn't just rehash Havana syndrome, it probed deeper. Could these silent weapons, microwave beams, pulsed energy, pose a much greater threat than simply a mere diplomatic nuisance?
What you all are saying is there's a government cover-up of the fact that something is out there afflicting, targeting us.
The gaslighting of AHI survivors continues to this day as history repeats itself. America's best men and women in national security are being targeted and neutralized in a global campaign.
With a high-powered microwave system weapon that may have the ability to weaken, intimidate, or kill an enemy over time and without leaving evidence. The 2012 intelligence information indicated that this weapon is designed to bathe a target's living quarters in microwaves, causing numerous physical effects, including a damaged nervous system. There's a wealth of publicly available information concerning the history of directed energy, and particularly its scientific, intelligence, and military applications. I provide an overview in my written testimony. Given the many years our government has been experimenting with developing directed energy weapons, why would anyone not believe our adversaries are engaged in the same efforts?
There's more than one way to achieve this same effect on the human brain. And one of the most disturbing denials that I've seen in some of the publications leading up to our findings being published was an attempt to create the impression that no technology would allow this impact on the human brain. That is provably untrue. There have been experiments that prove that both acoustic waves, directed waves in the ultrasound, primarily the ultrasound band, but also electromagnetic directed energy, especially pulsed nanosecond energy beams in the millimeter band through something called the Frey effect, which converts electromagnetic energy into an acoustic band wave that can be within or without or outside of the audible band, can have the same effect on the human brain, which can have long-term concussion-like symptoms. From my personal point of view, making this public is the best protection.
These are very covert weapons, aren't they? They don't leave behind bomb fragments, bullet holes, etc. They could absolutely be used by our adversaries and have very low levels of, very easy to deny that they were even there, that they were used. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's no entry or exit wound. How they're designed is to make the target feel like they're crazy, like they're imagining things, especially on the low duration, the low intensity, long duration hits.
Havana syndrome first hit the radar in 2016. Many sources suggested radio frequency energy as a culprit, echoing decades-old science on microwave auditory effects. Silent weapons hover at the edge of our understanding. But as neurotech blurs into warfare, one thing's clear. The threat doesn't shout, it whispers, making it deniable and leaving victims frustrated with the lack of help.
There's clearly a risk of an arms race here. I think it's already happening. There are documents and there are statements suggesting that militaries in some of the most developed, richest, economically stable countries are already developing neurotechnology.
There are reports that certain governments around the world are exploring forms of neurowarfare and kind of leaning into a future of cognitive warfare. And so that's something that greatly concerns me.
Neurotechnology is a weaponized technology. It's being used among military organizations across the world. And we're seeing organizations like DARPA in the United States. China has established a cognitive warfare unit. Many other countries are using these technologies for experimental purposes in the military sector, developing psychotronic weapons, developing some form of cognitive affective manipulation that could be used to suppress dissent or enforce conformity.
There's no collective conversation here. There are no parameters, there are no limits, there are no boundaries. It's incredibly worrying.
Governments have been eyeing the prize for many decades. Influence behavior, extract secrets, and disable enemies without firing a shot. In the shadow of the Cold War, the US and Soviet Union were both digging into psychotronic weapons. The Moscow signal was a reported decades-long microwave attack on the US embassy in the Russian capital. A later study found that embassy staff had a higher cancer mortality rate than the general population, with one ambassador reportedly bleeding from the eyes. During the same time period, the United States was embarking on one of its most secretive and controversial programs, Project MKUltra. Launched in 1953 by the CIA, MKUltra aimed to master the art of mind control. Over 2 decades, the program explored a chilling array of methods, including electroshock, hypnosis, and sensory deprivation, often testing them on unwitting subjects from prisoners to everyday citizens. MKUltra became a sprawling web of experiments, with over 149 sub-projects pushing the boundaries of science and ethics. Among these, Sub-Project 119 stood out. Initiated in the early 1950s, it sought to manipulate human behavior through remote electronic means, exploring bioelectric signals and brainwave activation. Sub-Project 142, on the other hand, ventured into the biological realm, experimenting with animals to test a combination of drugs and electrodes on behavior, laying groundwork for later human trials. On July 21, 1977, the veil over MKUltra began to lift. A bombshell article in the New York Times exposed the program to the public, detailing how the CIA had spent years conducting mind control experiments on unsuspecting Americans. The piece, spurred by newly released documents, revealed the agency's use of psychological torture and covert testing, much of it uncovered through a Freedom of Information Act request. But MKUltra didn't emerge in a vacuum. Its roots trace back to Operation Paperclip, a post-World War II initiative where the US recruited over 1,600 Nazi scientists to bolster American military and intelligence efforts. Some of these scientists, fresh from experiments in concentration camps, brought knowledge of torture, brainwashing, and human experimentation. This knowledge found a champion in Alan Dulles, the CIA's formidable director from 1953 to 1961. Dulles greenlit MKUltra, envisioning it as a weapon against Soviet mind control. Experiments leveraging technology to alter free will weren't limited to the CIA. Meet Dr. Jose Delgado, a Spanish professor turned Yale neuroscientist who, in the 1960s, stunned the world. With a flick of a switch, he stopped a charging bull dead in its tracks using a device he called the stymoceiver, a brain implant controlled by radio waves. Delgado spent decades probing the mind's wiring, from cats to monkeys to humans, sparking awe, fear, and a flood of questions. He dreamed of a psycho-civilized society where electrical jolts could tame aggression or shape behavior. He implanted electrodes into psychiatric patients, claiming he could trigger joy, rage, or calm on demand. His tools were crude by today's standards, but the idea? Hack the brain, control the person.
Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated remote control over a charging bull. By connecting a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain, Delgado proved that the animal's aggressive impulses could be thwarted by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes.
Do you realize the fantastic possibilities if from the outside we could modify the inside? Could we give messages to the inside? But the beauty is that now we are not using electrodes.
In recent years, Delgado has shown that the behavior of monkeys can be altered using low-power, pulsating magnetic fields. But in these experiments, there were no antenna implants.
Any function in the brain, emotions, intellect, personality, well, could be perhaps modified by this non-invasive technology.
Neuroweapons. The word conjures images of sci-fi villains and shadowy conspiracies. Tools that don't just target the body, but the mind itself. Take the so-called voice of God technology, known by some as V2K or voice to skull. The idea is simple but eerie. Use microwaves to beam sounds or voices straight into a person's head, bypassing their ears. It's rooted in the microwave auditory effect, also called the Frey effect. In 1960, a biologist named Alan Frey embarked on a groundbreaking journey that would challenge our understanding of the invisible world around us. Working at General Electric's Advanced Electronics Center at Cornell University, Frey was drawn into a mystery when a radar technician claimed he could hear the signals emitted by radar stations. What began as a curious anecdote soon unraveled into a scientific revelation: the discovery of the microwave auditory effect, a phenomenon where pulsed microwaves could produce audible sounds directly in the human brain. Pulsed frequencies heat tiny bits of brain tissue, creating a shock wave the auditory system picks up as sound. The military flirted with it. Documents from the army once described V2K as a non-lethal weapon, even floating it as an electronic scarecrow for airports. Then the page disappeared. In 2008, Wired reported that the US military had funded development of a non-lethal weapon that could create a sound inside your head using the microwave auditory effect. The publication quoted Dr. Lev Sadovnik of the Sierra Nevada Club, who suggested, in addition to military uses, these devices could be used at low power to produce a whisper that was too quiet to perceive consciously but might be able to subconsciously influence someone. Sadovnik even suggests subliminal advertising, beaming information that is not consciously heard. If this technology has been around since the 60s, you can bet it's much more advanced now. And if the mind can receive audio data wirelessly and at a distance without the need for augmentation, can other types of data be sent? Can the brain's signals, our thoughts and feelings, be read and decoded wirelessly too? Experts say we aren't there yet, but the intent is in that direction.
If wireless neurotechnology becomes more widely available, then it will also leverage much larger data sets, and these much larger data sets can be in turn used to better train the algorithms. And then the possibility of mass neural data collection, which in other words means mass mental surveillance, isn't far-fetched in my view.
We're told today's neurotech needs contact, headsets, implants, sensors pressed to your skull to read brain signals. Your brain's neurons fire off tiny electrical signals, measurable as low-frequency electromagnetic waves. But the signal would be like a whisper in the wind. Could a super-sensitive receiver, maybe paired with AI, detect and decode those signals remotely in future? After all, radio astronomy already snags faint cosmic signals from light years away. As neurotech races forward, the shadow cast by Frey, Delgado, and MKUltra looms, and many are wondering who picked up the mantle. One man at the cutting edge of neuroweapons capabilities is Dr. James Giordano, who is the director of the Center for Disruptive Technologies and Future Warfare. Giordano has worked in partnership with the Pentagon's DARPA and NATO.
By accessing the brain, we're able to affect its functions. What neuroweapons are those tools, those techniques, those means, and those methods of affecting the peripheral and central nervous system in ways that modify the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions of others in those ways or in those dimensions that are intentional. So we can then utilize these weapons in ways that are what we call kinetic. In other words, we can actually use them in sort of a combative way, but we can also use them in ways that are far more non-kinetic, in a more influential, perhaps disruptive and or deterrent way. We can't simply usurp information from someone's brain from a distance yet. Are we close? Well, I think we're certainly in the waiting room. The current DARPA project, Defense Advanced Research Project Agency project, that is referred to as N-cubed. It involves the use of neuroengineered sensors and transmitters that can be introduced to the brain space non-surgically, either via inhalation, injection, ingestion, absorption through a mucous membrane, migrated into the brain space utilizing some form of magnetic current due to the particular properties of these nanoengineered materials, and then utilizing this migrational pattern to form a relatively vast array of sensors and transmitters within the brain that allow real-time reading of information from the brain and writing of information to the brain remotely. I don't care how you twist this. This represents some iteration, some construal of, quote, mind reading and mind control. Can we infiltrate the brain space non-surgically, embed within the brain a vast array of nanomaterials that are capable of sensing and transmitting remotely in real time? And can you then be able to transmit information back into the brain in such a way that is going to be uptaken by the brain and then translated into some aspect of cognition, perhaps emotion, and perhaps also some execution of action and behavior? We're on that path. Could they be used by state agents and actors in ways that target specific individuals for clandestine engagement? Yes, absolutely. Could they, in fact, be inflicted upon an individual without this individual knowing? Well, yeah, actually they could. Some of these tools are also recognizing that the brain, as an electromagnetic organ, is therefore sensitive to a variety of energies that may be directable. And now we're talking about directed energy weapons and or directed energy devices that could be weaponized. And we're looking at a broad spectrum. For example, we're looking at directable and rangeable acoustics and sonics, ultrasound and infrasound, lasers, rapidly pulsed microwaves. And we recognize that each and all of those things speak to particular vulnerabilities in the way the human nervous system operates that can be affected by a variety of these tools that are increasing in their capability and sophistication that can affect individuals and groups of individuals in ways that they may not be aware at the time, to be able to induce effects that may be initially subtle but are nonetheless profound in terms of altering their capabilities of thought, their clarity of thought, their ability to function, the types of thoughts they have, vigilance, capability of thought, clear-mindedness, and a host of physiological functions, their balance, their coordination, their ability to do a job, their health. I think we also do need to be concerned about the potential capability of state actors, particularly state actors that exist within authoritarian regimes, to make particular demands that these technologies be implemented for social control.
It's not just the US military taking this seriously. NATO's François de Cloussul recently published a report entitled Cognitive Warfare, A Battle for the Brain, in which he talks about the convergence of 4 areas of technology: nano, bio, info, and cogno technologies, which when combined can turn the brain into the new front line in warfare.
Thank you for giving me the floor and the opportunity to discuss on cognitive warfare. Cognitive warfare causes an insidious challenge by attacking everyone's personal cognition. In other words, the ability to process information and to turn it into knowledge. It all disrupts the ordinary understandings and reactions to events in a gradual and subtle way that we cannot see at first sight, but with significant harmful effects over time. Cognitive warfare has universal reach. The massive worldwide investments made in neurosciences suggest that the cognitive domain will probably one of the battlefields of the future.
It's where the term tinfoil hat originated. People convinced the government is sending and receiving data to and from their minds. Self-described targeted individuals report relentless voices, remote monitoring of their thoughts, and electronic torture, blaming secret, unacknowledged special access programs, the CIA, and even Elon Musk.
Before I supported Trump and everything, there were two guys that traveled to Austin to kill me. I don't know if you know about this.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
Yeah. And two separate incidents. One guy thought I put a chip in his head.
Targeted individuals claim they're under attack by invisible forces. To the outside world, it's a delusion. To them, it's a living hell they can't escape. The Wikipedia page dedicated to it even calls it a delusional belief, without any evidence to prove that statement. Mark is one of an estimated 300,000 people worldwide who identify as targeted individuals, or TIs.
I run a human rights organisation in the UK, the main one in the UK regarding this technology. It's called targetedsurvivors.com. All of a sudden, I just had extreme anxiety, like I was just on edge. I was getting all of these symptoms and things that I couldn't really explain. I couldn't even put it in words at that point. This technological presence, if you like, this technological abuse became very prevalent in my life. Memory loss, which I experienced, problems with concentration, dizziness, not being able to walk straightly even at times when they would affect my inner ear, visual disturbances, pain in the ear, throbbing, pulsating headaches, choking sensations, not feeling able to breathe. I've experienced painful shots, directed energy, like almost like these sharp little pin shots, like high frequency pin shots being fired into me. So I typed in mind control into the computer, and I came across all of this technological part. I literally spent the next 3 months just glued to my computer learning all about this. And I made the decision that I was, rather than just kind of ignore it, I was going to really do my best to put the word out there in the biggest way. So I then became really involved in activism, in helping to stop these remote weapon assaults. Some people call it electronic harassment, electronic torture. I'm one of the, I would say, foremost activists in this country, alongside a few others who are bringing this into the awareness of important people in human rights, government. One of the main things that really helped with me was understanding the symptomology of the technology and really studying that, and then correlating that with the effects that I was having personally. And I was able to verify that I was having this, not just for myself, but through other people, by corroborating this with many, many, many other people, both through online, people I spoke to personally. I spoke to hundreds of victims over the course of the next years, building up the picture through patents, seeing that there was over 100 registered patents to do with mind control, pertaining to mind control technology. There is a lot of evidence out there backing this up as well. All credible evidence, if you're willing to look, if you're willing to do the research, and if you have an open mind, willing to go there. Because for a lot of people, it's a fear thing. It's like people don't. It's the ultimate fear. This kind of, well, I'm not safe in my own home. This is the most important human rights abuse in the world that is happening right now. The goal of this program is trauma-based mind control. The way that they're using this technology comes from the same playbook and methods and approach that they've used on this more traditional physical torture MKUlture program. For example, torturing the individual to the point where their mind is weakened and they're more programmable. It appears now that the program is very much used on an experimentation level and on an oppression level as well. So, for example, people that are speaking out in the military intelligence and or people that have been in military intelligence and they have too much information, they know too much.
Targeted individuals describe a relentless campaign of surveillance and torment, coordinated gang stalking by strangers, electronic torture, fear that they've been implanted without their knowledge. Their stories and theories vary, but the symptoms are always similar. The pain is real for targeted individuals. It's a battle to prove their sanity, keep their dignity, and get answers. They're ordinary people targeted by forces they can't escape. Harassed by invisible waves, their minds invaded by voices no one else hears. Their bodies zapped when they think certain things. Their stories and their suffering demand our attention. There are simply too many cases reported for this to be a delusion or mass psychosis, and the symptoms are too consistent to dismiss. Yet many are often written off as having mental health issues. Every day is a battle against an enemy that denies its own existence. For most, the mind is a sanctuary, private and untouchable. But for the people targeted justice represents, it's a battleground. As the leading organization supporting targets of this harassment, Targeted Justice search for truth in the shadowy world of experimental, hidden technology and covert surveillance programs, run by those who live it themselves. In this clip from the Danny Jones podcast, Targeted Justice's medical lead, Len Burr, describes his own experience as a target.
It starts very suddenly. It's vibration. It's high pressure in the head, and your whole body vibrates. Deafening sound. You also hear voices. Yeah. The voices, V2K is a part of it. In Havana syndrome, I sent you that clip. The very first reporting by CNN, they said that people hear noises and voices. Mm-hmm. And after that, there was it was not part of any reporting. People think that hearing voices is a sign of psychiatric disorder, right. But it just takes a little bit of education to understand this Frey effect, this microwave hearing has been around for a long time, has been known, and voice modulation has been demonstrated in the 70s. There's published literature about it. The most plausible hypothesis is directed pulse microwave energy. So that's the causative agent. That's what causes the brain damage.
Directed pulse microwave energy.
Yeah, pulse is very, very important because if you just microwave, it just heats up. But short pulses produce that thermoelastic effect. So the tissue is just expanding and collapsing in that way. It heats up just enough to induce damage or produce that audio, that Frey effect.
It isn't just Targeted Justice and Targeted UK raising awareness on this issue. There's also the Stop Egg Foundation, PAX International, and the International Coalition Against Electronic Torture, or ICOTOR. We spoke to Melanie Vritchen, president of ICOTOR, about the TI experience.
I'm the president and the founder of the International Coalition Against Electronic Torture and Robotization of Living Beings, in short, ICOTOR. And we are a Brussels-based not-for-profit association aiming at promoting the recognition of the rights of victims of illegal experiments using remote influencing technologies. That means implantable electronic devices and directed energy weapons. Our organization's goal is to influence European and international legislation by calling for a global ban on weapons that enable any form of human manipulation. The number of people complaining about being victimized by these technologies is indeed increasing exponentially in all countries. Physical and psychological symptoms, complaints they express are identical everywhere. And the victims' complaints about artificial auditory effects, electronic shock sensations in various extremities, needle-like sensations in specific areas of the body, and experience of brain stimulation. So this is what they all said. The abuse of these type of technologies without consent constitutes a serious violation of the Hippocratic Oath, the Nuremberg Code, and the fundamental human rights of the European Union and UN, as well as the constitutions of most Western countries. The exponential rise in the numbers of the complaints that from all over the world that reaching us strongly indicates that this is beyond just a test. This is there's a political objective here to use these weapons on a very large scale on the population for population control, strong limitation of civil liberties, such as free speech and expressing one's political opinions. Faced with the rapid expansion of neurotechnologies and the seriousness and the large scale of these human rights abuses, we request that the EU lawmakers urgently create appropriate legislation to protect all citizens in the EU and their physical integrity. Electronic torture certainly is a crime against humanity.
Victims describe directed energy, microwaves, radio frequencies, or pulsed electromagnetic fields deployed with surgical precision. They report searing pain, pin-like attacks all over their body over extended durations, synthetic tinnitus, and voices. Others cite burns, memory loss, even heart palpitations. Often these electromagnetic attacks are reported to react to thoughts. One victim from China managed to make the mainstream news.
An unusual type of harassment has reportedly appeared in China, seemingly taken from the pages of a science fiction novel. Some claim the Chinese regime has developed a special kind of technology used to broadcast information directly into a person's mind. Known as electronic harassment, it's allegedly used to silence those who dare to speak out.
Wang Haibang says he's been suffering from what he calls electronic harassment for 12 years. He explained that it all started after he filed a corruption report in 2008. It was against then police chief of the Wuning County Public Security Bureau inside Jiangxi province.
They observe my mind with the device and watch my movements. They also use the audio function to send voices to my mind, disturbing me round the clock.
Wang says he believes the local police are behind the electronic harassment. He explained that to him it seems that they take shifts talking, insulting, and denouncing him in an effort to spark his anger and make him talk back. According to him, the technology makes it so that only he can hear the noise. He describes it as a never-ending battle in his mind. Wang began in Beijing in 2015. It's taken him 4 years to get confirmation about the technology from China's Ministry of Public Security.
The reception staff of the Public Security Ministry said that they indeed have this kind of equipment. It's very expensive. It's available in all police departments at the county level and above. The equipment can monitor your thinking and send voices to your mind and talk to you in your head.
The CCP hasn't hidden its intention to weaponize mind control. Regime media mouthpiece Xinhua reprinted an article earlier last year speaking highly of the technology's military and wartime value. The article says the purpose of mind control weapons is not the destruction of an enemy's flesh, but of his will. It also says the new technology doesn't require a chip implanted in the human brain. Instead, electromagnetic waves, light, sound waves, smells, among other things, can be used. Reporting by Xu Wanhui, NTD News.
Forms of torture are prohibited by international human rights law, so any form of torture that was enabled by neurotechnology devices, we know would also be prohibited. Our team strongly believes that any form of non-consensual reading of your thoughts and using them against you would be a violation so invasive and so distressing that it could constitute inhumane and degrading treatment under international human rights law.
The UN Human Rights Council has formally flagged this. So in their most recent report, the advisory committee made it very clear that use of neurotech for torture is a violation of human rights. So that would be quite a serious crime. But of course, just because something is prohibited by the UN doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And neurotech is advancing rapidly. Much of it is outside the public eye. And so there is a real risk that some applications are being explored, and it's something that we need to keep a close eye on.
Targeted individuals aren't asking for belief, they're demanding action. The question isn't if they're real, it's who's next. And it could be everyone.
Voice to Skull, the Department of Defense employees, where they like to use the term like hearing peculiar sounds. That's the cover, hearing voices in your head. And
then you're crazy, right?
Right. So nobody wants to say these things because it sounds terrible. But if this technology is being applied to all of us in mass, consider it. At some point, we need to have some very serious conversations about what the capabilities of modern technology are and the implications.
Do you think that they're using it en masse?
Absolutely.
On the American populace or certain cities? Or
on the world.
Not only can we put information in without blowing up your brain, we can put it in and then you can believe it so sincerely that the problem is you can testify to that effect. There's some really interesting research that we can plant false memories in the brain. And in a different context, one of the emerging areas that's really interesting in law neuroscience is pain detection. And once we understand the circuitries that cause pain, I guess the question is, could we then instill pain and use that in many coercive measures in the legal system as well?
It has many names. Havana syndrome, anomalous health incidents, electronic harassment. It's happening to military personnel, spies, and civilians. Yet on the civilian side, it's often overlooked or ridiculed. Somebody is using exotic weaponry against law-abiding citizens with cases reported around the world. I too am experiencing these attacks, which started after I retweeted a video of a whistleblower in Ukraine alleging he witnessed a crime committed by a member of the British royal family. It's like I'm being tasered every minute of the day, but these attacks somehow react to your thoughts with millisecond latency, and that's the elephant in the room. Targeted individuals are telling the truth. This is a weapon that seems to be able to capture your thoughts in real time and can inflict a variety of effects on the brain and body, including various types of pain and unintended movement of the limbs, as well as being able to send different types of data directly into the mind. Despite many theories, nobody seems to know how they're doing this, but as we have seen, it's happening to many, many people. Both Mark and Melanie said to me off camera that they know victims that have taken their own lives. Such is the debilitating and destabilizing nature of this weapon. Could the nano-engineered particles that Dr. Giordano mentioned be to blame, or is this being done solely by directed energy weapons? Could it be one single entity, or are multiple governments around the world testing these tools on their own citizens? Are neuroweapons that can remotely inflict pain and read your thoughts our new reality? Because if so, the balance of power has shifted, and that should greatly concern everybody. I believe we need an international disclosure of the capabilities of militarized neuroweaponry and a substantial push for legal protections against any unacknowledged covert use of these technologies. Most people have no idea what a neuroweapon is, let alone what it's capable of. We need full transparency on this so people know what to look for if it's turned on them, as well as legislation that guards against any kind of subliminal or emotional manipulation of both individuals and mass populations. Something very dark is happening here, and I have a terrible fear this program could be scaled up to many millions of people. We must do something. At first, I had no idea what was happening to me, but then I saw the Daily Mail article.
In April 2018, a strange package landed in the inbox of Curtis Waltman, a journalist digging into Antifa and white supremacist groups for Muckrock, a Boston-based non-profit obsessed with prying secrets from government vaults. He'd filed a routine Freedom of Information Act request with the Washington State Fusion Center, a United States Homeland Security outfit that tracks threats and shares intel. What he got back was completely out of the ordinary. In amongst the files he requested was a zip file labeled EM Effects on Human Body, and it cracked open a Pandora's box of weirdness. Inside were documents straight out of a conspiracy fever dream. Remote mind control, forced memory blanking, microwave hearing. One slide detailed a laundry list of horrors: intense electromagnetic-induced pain, broadcasting and decoding thoughts, wild flailing of the limbs when trying to sleep. Another promised to beam voices into your skull using electromagnetic waves. The files matched the symptoms of targeted individuals to the letter. So how did this end up in Waltman's hands? The Fusion Center clammed up. No explanation, no callback. Was it a slip-up or an intentional leak? An intel officer trying to do their part to warn the public? So, If psychotronic and directed energy weapons are being used against the public, why hasn't there been any whistleblowers or media coverage? Well, actually, there has. Former governor of Minnesota, ex-Navy SEAL and WWF wrestler Jesse Ventura covered the targeted individual program in a 2012 episode of his hit show Conspiracy Theory. In the episode entitled Brain Invaders, which is available online, he took viewers into the world of targeted individuals.
So when MK Ultra came to the forefront and it became public knowledge
in the 70s,
the government said they canned the program, it was gotten rid of, and you're chuckling over that. Is that untrue?
Well,
did they get rid of the mind control program, or did they just rename it and take it somewhere else?
It was a shell game. They had a procedure where they actually put a transmitter transceiver in your sinus cavity, and it was hardwired into your brain.
What would they use today in substitution for that?
Microwaves.
And they can target one individual with this? They have the ability to do that?
Well, yes, and they also have the ability to do mass population.
They have the ability to do that?
Well, there's a variety of answers, and all of them go back to the same thing, electromagnetic pulse.
They put thoughts in their heads, they hear voices. What would be the government's purpose for doing this?
Absolute control.
One of the guests interviewed in the episode was Dr. Robert Duncan, a Harvard-trained scientist who worked with the CIA, DARPA, and the Department of Defense.
I've worked on projects for the CIA, Justice Department, Department of Defense.
We've run into a few people that claim they got voices in their heads, they sleep inside tinfoil boxes, they do a lot of crazy things, it seems. But when they talk to us, they seem totally normal. They seem totally sane. Are these people crazy, or is the government doing this to them?
The government's doing this to them. They're called voice of God weapons.
So you know for a fact that these weapons that you worked on, they're being used domestically today?
Absolutely. It's the ultimate weapon.
To your knowledge today, are there citizens of this country that are being abused with this technology?
Worse than abused, that's a light word. They're being tortured. They easily could be broadcasting across the country messages to people and causing them extreme pain. That's part of the whole world domination strategy. Control the population from subconsciously to consciously.
So what you're telling me, every one of us should be in fear of this because every one of us at some point will be targeted?
The technology's advanced that far.
In another interview with the Danny Jones podcast, Duncan went a lot further.
A lot of these school shootings, I think that you hear about on the news. They hear voices. And the news, the mass news media will just write them out. Oh, they're crazy. About 20 years ago, I realized some of my research was being utilized on my own citizens. And that was unacceptable to me. And since then, I've done hundreds of interviews, interviewed 2,500 victims or targeted individuals, as they're called. We've been working on the same weapons, directed energy weapons, often referred to as DO, mind control weapons. Chinese are working on them. The Russians and U.S. have had them for a long time. It can be done through microwave directed energy if it's amplified. And in fact, there's something called the Frey effect. The Army had it on their website called V2K, and that's how a lot of people refer to it, that can pipe voices into someone's head. You can't plug your ears. It actually vibrates the brain, which is like many concussions, through the small pulses that expand the tissue and then contracts it, then goes to the inner ear where they can hear it. If you cognitively model someone, you have a brain print, like a fingerprint, and if you use autocorrelation techniques, and there's a way, and we'll just kind of wave our hand, functional MRI that you can do at a distance over the earth, you have every human being brain pattern. You can control 8 billion brains on the planet, potentially, read them. So in that situation, you'd want it continuous, and you'd beam the entire Earth over it. You're like a cell phone. Your brain is a circuit. So if you're dialed in, once you have a cognitive model, you would never be able to escape it under the magnetosphere or ionosphere. It's worldwide.
Duncan isn't the only whistleblower. In a 2012 interview with the International Centre Against Abuse of Covert Technologies, Barry Trower, a British physicist, former Royal Navy microwave weapons expert, and MI5 MI6 debriefer, says he saw the creep of these silent weapons decades ago.
I trained with the government microwave warfare establishment. With one pulse frequency, you can just make people so suicidal, they can't be bothered to act like a demonstrator anymore. All they want to do is sleep or lay in bed all day. So if you're targeting demonstrators, you make them suicidally depressed. If you want to cause a specific psychiatric illness, you would have an infrared device that followed the person, and you would link it to a pencil-thin microwave source, so the microwave beam would always target a specific gland or a specific part of the brain or an eye or a heart. They can cause insanity, and it was an experiment. One of the experiments was to take an ordinary sane person, cause insanity, and have a psychiatrist who was unknown to everybody diagnose schizophrenia or paranoia or a psychiatric illness. That was a successful outcome, and the person would spend the rest of their life in an asylum in misery, but to the government scientists that was a success.
In another interview with independent British media outlet UK Column, Trower goes on to point the finger at unelected, unaccountable facets of government.
They can decide to carry out an experiment on people. They can cause the death of these people, and they have done. They found they could put pulses in the microwaves or modulations, and the modulations could interfere with the natural brain waves called entrainment. And they found that when you entrained a brain for causing aggression or whatever, when you entrained a brain, that the effect could last up to 6 weeks. And we're talking severe aggression, severe sexual aggression, total and absolute despondency, hopelessness, suicidal tendencies. I would like somebody in power to get hold of these liars and say, because they are manipulating government. Without a shadow of a doubt, we have a stream of liars somewhere, and they go through governments. And they know exactly how to handle the governments, they know exactly what to tell the ministers, exactly how to defend themselves. It's under the Official Secrets Act. You can't tell them this, you can't tell them that. You have this upper government who control government.
From the northern reaches of Finland emerged a voice that dared to challenge our understanding of the modern world. Rauni-Leena Luukkonen-Kilde, a respected physician, spent her later years unveiling what she saw as a hidden truth. The militaries of the world are far down the road in the development of brain weapons.
My background is that of a medical doctor. I'm a retired chief medical officer of Lapland, which is the northern part of Finland. I've also been director at the National Board of Health. I've been member of the New York Academy of Sciences, and currently I'm a bestseller author and lecturer in 6 languages in Europe. The whole thing about mind control is the manipulation of human beings. And that can be done in many, many various ways, chemically also, but mostly now with electromagnetic fields. Today, the technology is so flabbergasting that they can read your mind, they can read your thoughts, they can read your unconscious, they can even read your intentions, your subconscious, before you yourself know it. And of course, these are thought signals that supercomputers like from NSA, National Security Agency, they turn them into words and sentences with extreme speed. There are professors, there are scientists who deliberately or not knowing give total disinformation. They don't know about the military research, which is always about 50 years. 50 years, minimum 30, but 50 years before the academic research. And that's why the academic people don't know anything about the whole thing. And they always pick out young men who maybe have psychological problems before, and then they start beaming the frequency of hate. And when the frequency of hate is beamed at you for months or a couple of years even, there's nothing you can resist. You have to be a robot and you have to kill. And when you kill yourself, then they can't, ask questions about you. If they want you into a rage, there's a frequency for rage. Of course, the military has to exercise. If they have a new weapon, they have to exercise. And who do they exercise with? Well, from Norway, they can't go against Finland or Sweden or Russia, which are neighboring countries. They can go against their own population. And the same, of course, goes for the US.
Another whistleblower is Dr. Nick Begich, a name that resonates in two worlds: Alaska's rugged political lineage and the shadowy realm of mind control. Son of a late US congressman, Begich has carved his own path. For targeted individuals, Begich is a rare ally. The following clip was taken from his presentation at the 2015 Covert Harassment Conference.
What Delgado discovered by the mid-'80s is that you didn't need any implants. You just needed to manipulate the energy itself, and you didn't need a great deal of energy. He discovered that 1/50th of the amount of energy in the natural background noise of the Earth was sufficient to manipulate the behavior of human beings if you could hit the right frequencies. Now, Jose Delgado, when he figured out that you didn't need implants, you just need to manipulate the energy itself, this became kind of the essence of sort of where everything went from there. The Navy set up a new set of regulations for human experiments. It was approved in 2006. And in this, they specifically call out mind control experiments and who has the authority to approve them. And the persons with the authority to approve them is undersecretaries of the Navy in the case of Navy intelligence or naval research. Now, it's not just CIA. Naval intelligence does this work. The Marines have a section on non-lethal weapons that this falls under. The Air Force has the Electromagnetic Directorate, which is working in an area called controlled effects, which deal again with mind control and physiological effects on human beings. And the third leg of controlled effects is the human operator. And what they say in this particular article, produced by the Electromagnetic Directorate of the Air Force, is that we can target or create the illusion of all of the senses in the human body, sight, sound, touch, taste, to give people complete memory sets, complete experiential sets that you wouldn't be able to distinguish the synthetic from the real. One of the other ways that this technology can be exploited is really quite simple. There was an article produced by Perimeters, which is a military publication. Perimeters, you can look it up. It's I believe it was the fall 1998, but you can look up the article name called "The Mind Has No Firewalls." Very important article. This article talked about all the various ways in which you could introduce mind effects or mind control technologies using modern technology today.
The idea that someone believes that they can interfere with your free will. This is something that most religions in the world say God won't even do. Yet, men think this is their appropriate direction in technology to interfere with the way consciousness flows.
Finally, there's Brian Coffrin. a self-proclaimed whistleblower who never appeared on camera. Cochran went viral with a number of audio recordings where he alleges he was once a cog in a shadowy machine, an employee at a security company in Seattle, Washington, allegedly wielding silent weapons being used to target innocent Americans. His voice carries conviction, detailing a world which matches up with many targeted individuals' experiences.
I'm a security industry specialist who worked for a private security company in Seattle, Washington. I am no longer employed by this company. I chose to leave because I could no longer in good conscience work for a corrupt company that is involved in a highly illegal federal program that is blatantly violating the constitutional rights of American citizens on a daily basis. This technology manipulates the electrical signals in the brain, thus controlling thoughts and feelings and emotions and sensations throughout the body. This technology can also be used to manipulate the emotions of the target. It can induce fear, love, hate. It can cause you to be nervous. It can cause you to be confident. It can cause you to be depressed. It can cause you to be happy. This technology can be used to beam images and even motion pictures into one's brain. This technology can also be used to read the thoughts of the target in real time, and they can read your thoughts verbatim as they occur within your own mind. The overall effect of this technology is one that can control the mood, the attitudes, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, and thus the motivations, and then the actions of the target. All day, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is a highly sophisticated technology. It is one that produces literal and total and complete mind control over the targeted individual.
At the United Nations, the fight against torture is a cornerstone of its mission. Physical and psychological torment have long been condemned under international law. But what happens when the weapon isn't visible? When it's electromagnetic waves, pulsed energy, or nanotechnologies targeting the body and mind? In 2018, a petition reached the UN Human Rights Council. Activists claimed governments were using psychotronic devices for torture, zapping brains, disrupting sleep, inducing pain without a trace. So where do the UN stand on the issue of neuro rights? In 2024, they published a groundbreaking report titled Impact, Opportunities and Challenges of Neurotechnology with Regard to the Promotion and Protection of All Human Rights. The UN report warns of unprecedented risks. Neural data could expose our thoughts, emotions and desires, threatening our right to privacy and mental integrity. Without clear rules, employers or governments could exploit these tools, eroding autonomy. From global standards to public education, the report urges action to protect our rights while embracing innovation. Neurotechnology stands at a crossroads, a marvel of human ingenuity, a lifeline for the broken, a window into the mind's deepest secrets. But as we've seen, its shadow stretches far beyond healing. The tools that promise to enhance us could just as easily enslave us, turning the brain, the last bastion of our individuality, into a battlefield. This isn't a distant dystopia, it's a risk we're already flirting with. Are targeted individuals the digital lab rats? We know from MKUltra that these kinds of programs are possible and don't ask for permission from the people they recruit as guinea pigs. Now, neurotech hands them sharper tools, nanotechnology, real-time brain data, directed electromagnetic pulses. Zbigniew Brzezinski saw it coming. Brzezinski wasn't just an author. He was a man who'd helped shape US policy under President Jimmy Carter. In his 1970 book, Between Two Ages, the future National Security Advisor warned of a technotronic era, a world where technology and psychology fuse to control entire societies. He wrote of elites wielding data and science to manage humanity, predicting a grid so tight it will soon be possible to assert almost continuous surveillance over every citizen. In one of the most famous quotes from the book, he wrote, "I foresee a time when we shall have the means and therefore inevitably the temptation to manipulate the behavior and intellectual functioning of all the people through environmental and biochemical manipulation of the brain." Was this just a good guess or a chilling warning from an insider who knew where military advances were headed? Brzezinski wasn't alone. In his final goodbye address, President Dwight Eisenhower gave the world a stark warning.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
Fascism doesn't need jackboots when it can whisper directly into your neurons or zap you for wrongthink as soon as an idea creeps into your mind.
Some of the devices, some of the technology, some of the scientific papers are reporting the ability to interfere with the human mind, interfere with what we would perhaps think to be spontaneous, autonomous thoughts, thought processes, mental states, but are actually being influenced externally and without our knowledge. That's a complete violation, a complete erasure of our individual autonomy.
What does it mean to be entering a new paradigm where there are deeply embedded technologies that have the potential to change our brain activity? The idea of technologies being able to transform or alter the very neural processes that lead to who we are and what humanity is, it makes this deeply urgent and existential.
This is a revolution that will fundamentally transform what it means to be a human. If your freedom to think freely and the privacy of your mind are endangered, then all the other freedoms that depend upon these two basic freedoms will be violated.
Like with any powerful technology, neurotech can be used for good and it can be used for harm. And so that has the potential to really reach into the core of who we are. So our thoughts, memories, emotions, sense of self. With the current consumer technologies on the market, that's not the case, but there's research going on behind the scenes. There's more powerful technologies coming. And misuse of that is particularly chilling.
We are sleepwalking into a world where our thoughts can be accessed, predicted, manipulated without our consent and potentially even without our awareness.
Will this hijacking of our cognitive privacy be sold to us as a Minority Report-style attempt to tackle pre-crime? Will dream thieves be able to steal intellectual property and secrets while you sleep, like the movie Inception? Will we be able to install Total Recall-style fake memories into our brain to escape our dreary lives, as Google's Ray Kurzweil predicts? Hollywood's been warning us for a while that a dark future awaits us. Think of The Matrix, a world where humanity's plugged in, stripped of agency, living as batteries for a system that owns them. Neurotech could be our slow slide into that pod. If your perceptions can be hacked, your emotions dialed up or down, your choices scripted by a signal, what's left of you? This technology has the potential to reduce us to nodes in a techno-fascist smart grid, where dissent is not just crushed, it's erased before it forms as a thought. We're not there yet, but the pieces are falling into place.
The growing techno-political oligarchy that is emerging around the world, they have a great interest in your minds. They have a great interest in your thoughts, and they have a great interest in surveying and governing your behavior.
I consider that neurotechnology isn't so much a new threat or a new challenge for human rights protections. It maps on to all of the existing systematic challenges that human rights face. Inequality, discrimination, poverty, abuse of power and powerlessness, coercion, exploitation, all of these things will be present, if not amplified, in some contexts through the use of neurotechnology. So we really need to think in a joined up way how to provide international protections for individuals, for the human mind in this context, and we need to do it quickly.
Neurotechnology's promise is dazzling, but its threat is existential. Will we wield it to rise, or let it bury what makes us human? The choice isn't tomorrow's, it's now. And the clock's ticking, louder than you think.